You alright, Emma? Yeah, I'm almost finished planting. It's not very impressive because there's no hardscape and they're all really tiny plants at the moment, so it's going to look worse before it looks better, if you know what I mean. I've been procrastinating over for so long over deciding what plants to use. Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of the Dutch aquascaping series. If you missed part 1, I'll leave a link in the description. It just gives a basic introduction to the Dutch style and why I'm creating one. This video is going to be about choosing the plants, why I've chosen them, where I'm going to put them, and actually planting them. I will confess I've procrastinated a lot over this. I think it's so far out of my comfort zone. I've just been overthinking, and long story short, what I've done is basically using plants that have been left over from a couple of previous scapes that I've done. You can see those videos as well. I did one with Alex Bell, the new PFK editor, and one with MD fish tanks. So these are some of the leftover plants, and I thought rather than having kind of analysis paralysis and having almost an unlimited selection and getting all confused, I'll just use what I've got, and then what will happen is as the aquascape progresses and I feel that the plants aren't quite appropriate potentially, I can always remove them and put some new species in. So I just thought it's better to get started, make some mistakes along the way, and then kind of evolve the aquascape as we move forward. And that's what I do with aquascaping in general anyway. I very rarely have a very fixed idea of what the end aquascape will look like. In fact, most of my aquascapes never really have an end goal. They're just part of a process. I'm a great believer in process over outcome. Let's talk about the plants. First of all, they're all kindly donated by Tropica Aquarium Plants, and the vast majority are the Tropica Want to Grow. Thank you so much for those that commented on the first video in the series. There was actually a judge from the NBAT, which is the Nederlandse Bond Aquaterra, basically the association to do with Dutch aquariums, and he suggested I actually do more than the 6 species which is recommended for this tank size. So I think we're using 10 species or so in here. We'll go through them species by species, and I am using a lot of crypts. Now the reason for that is that these previous 2 scapes that I did with MD and Alex were crypt heavy, and that kind of goes against the rules a little bit because we're supposed to be using species that contrast in texture and colour with each other. Now what I have done deliberately is make sure the colours contrast with each other as the plants are adjacent. However, some of the textures may be quite similar. So if that is the case, when they do mature, I can always switch them out for something more appropriate. So starting with the foreground, we have 4 species across the foreground. Now these won't be divided equally, otherwise it will look too symmetrical. And I will decide later on the actual boundary areas of each species. So that will be something to consider later in the video. So over to the right, we have the Cryptocorini parva. So here's Crypt parva. This is the smallest crypt that Tropica produce. And actually in the cup, there's probably at least 10 to 20, maybe even more individual portions. So I'll divide them up appropriately, and that will be planted in the foreground right-hand side. It's a very slow grower. It does carpet, and I will just make sure it stays within the boundary, and there needs to be a distinct kind of gap in between the parva and the next species along. So to the left of the parva, we have Marsilea hirsuta. Now this is appropriate. Next to the parva is a different texture, and it's a darker green colour. And it's another slow grower. It does carpet again, so we will need to keep it in check to prevent it from entering, crossing over into the next species along. But yeah, it should be relatively easy to control along with the parva, both relatively slow. They're all easy as well. Most of these plants, in fact, I think all of these species are easy in this scape. So that will go next to the parva, and hopefully will look quite attractive. So I just need to decide on how much area to cover with each species. All 1-2 grow, as you can see, and Tropica have developed this new labelling system now, so there's less plastic being used in their packaging, which I think is really great. And for those that have never seen the 1-2 grows before, they're really cool. They're grown in a liquid or a gel media, which means they adapt to growing underwater immediately. And you've got some great information there where the plant goes. You've got a QR code for the plant profile, and then you've got the category, so the green means easy, produced in Denmark. And then you've got obviously a little drawing of the plant there. And then in the plant there, we've probably got at least, if we wanted to, probably 100 or so individual portions. Okay, next in the foreground, and now this will actually run from the foreground and it will slope upwards towards the right-hand side into the background. So this will create a kind of street effect, which is a common kind of technique used in Dutch aquascaping. And I've had great success with Sterigine before and created similar kind of bushes with it. So I know, or hopefully, it will get the effect that I'm after. So it will be kept very short in the foreground and allowed to grow taller in the background. This will take several months to reach its full potential, but you know, this is going to be a long-term scape, I'm hoping. So again, this is easy, and there's at least, again, you know, 100 or so individual stems in there if we just decided to split them up enough. And I actually have 5 pots of this. I'm excited to grow this one. I've had great results, and it will contrast again with the adjacent plant, the Marsilea, because this is a much brighter green and the texture is more of a triangle leaf versus the round leaf of the Marsilea. In the foreground on the left hand side we have Cryptocoryne albedo brown. This does get a little bit taller than what you see here, probably will grow up to 15 centimetres tall or so, but we can actually keep it shorter just by keep trimming the tallest leaves. Never really grown it in the long term, so I'm interested to see how this performs. And again, it does have a contrasting texture and colour to the adjacent Sterigine repens, so I think it will look quite nice next to that. Again, it's easy plants. It does do well in higher lighting, and that will bring out the colours more. As you can see already, it's kind of like a brown pigment on there. That can actually turn a bit of a red colour depending on the lighting and the nutrient profile, etc. So yeah, excited to see this one grow. It's a slow grower like most crypts as well, so should be relatively easy to maintain. Okay, Midground on the right hand side, we've got Cryptocoryne myeoia. Now this is a very interesting crypt, and it does kind of look different depending on the conditions that it's grown in. So it's a little bit of a kind of suck it and see plant, like many crypts actually. So it tends to go like a browny colour, and I think it does have like a mottled kind of hammered leaf texture. Can get relatively tall, sort of 20, maybe even 30 centimetres tall in the very long term. So it might have to be controlled because the aquarium is only 35 centimetres tall. Again, there's quite a few portions in here, so we'll definitely be able to cover the appropriate area. There are a lot of crypt species in here. Not sure if I'll replace these with maybe some other stem plants or maybe another rosette plant in the longer term, but just keen to kind of get this scape going. Okay, sticking to the right hand side of the scape, we've got the Sagittaria subulata. Now the common name for this is dwarf sag, but it tends to get much taller, and I'm hopeful to use that to our advantage and actually create an attractive background kind of reedy effect that's going to contrast in colour and texture to the adjacent Sterigine, which will be to the left, and the Crypt myeoia, which will be to the front of this plant. This will definitely need keeping in check. It sends out runners prolifically, and it will actually take over the whole aquarium if not controlled with appropriate maintenance. So the runners will need to be trimmed, and excess plantlets will need to be removed as well. Definitely enough plants just in this one pot. You can see it's almost bursting literally at the seams. Midground left now, so this is going to go behind the albedo brown and to the left of the Sterigine. This is Cryptocoryne wenditii green, and although it's called green, it does take on a reddish tinge, especially down the centre of the leaves, so it should look quite attractive. Not necessarily a great contrasting texture to the Sterigine with its kind of triangular leaf, or even the albedo brown that's in front of it, which also has a similar leaf texture but much finer, but the colour is contrasting. So I think it will just be a case of seeing how it goes and see how effective it looks next to those other species. It's one of the easiest crypts that's available, so it should grow to at least 15 centimetres, maybe 20 centimetres tall. It can send out runners and start to carpet, so we'll only keep it in check. But like I said, one of the easiest, hardiest crypts that you can grow, like soft water, hard water, and adapts very easily. So should be a relatively easy plant to contend with. And again, so many individual portions in here. One of the other advantages of the 1-2 grows is that you get so many plants for your money. They're just smaller, but they do grow and adapt relatively quickly because they've been grown in the liquid media or the gel media. Moving over to the left-hand side of the Starogini, just behind the Crypt Wenditii green, we've got Cryptocorini nerii. And again, this is obviously a crypt, so the leaf texture is very similar, but the colour is very different, and it's actually a very beautiful high-impact colour. So this could be a focal point plant. We don't actually have any bright red plants in here right now. That's something to consider for the future. But this does get quite tall. It can get up to 25 centimetres tall, so it's great towards the background. And I do have 2 pots of this, although we don't have as many individual portions in these particular pots today. This is Rotala rotundifolia green. This will be to the background towards the centre. This is our medium category, so it will benefit from higher lighting and CO2 injection, which is what we'll be using in this scape. This is a fast growing stem plant, and under good lighting it kind of cascades forward. So it will be interesting to see how this kind of grows. It will really depend on the lighting, the nutrient conditions, etc. So again, this will be a bit of an experiment to see how it kind of looks in the scape in the longer term. Literally hundreds of stems in here, so more than enough for our area. Okay, classic hygrophila that I like to use in many of my scapes. This is Hygrophila coriambosa siamensis 53B. Very similar to the regular Coriambosa siamensis, but of a finer, smaller leaf. Very fast grower. It will take a little while to adapt to grow underwater because it's been grown in the greenhouses out of water hydroponically. So it won't grow immediately, but it is very adaptable. So it should start to grow quite quickly and help, because it's a fast grower with the Rotala. This will help to avoid potential early algae issues. We'll talk about those later. So this is the final species, and this will be planted all the way to the back left. Here's a pro tip for you. If you need to leave your plants for any length of time, just to stop them drying out, just put a load of paper towels over them and spray the towels. I use rainwater, because if I accidentally get any of my hard tap water on the glass, it just dries out and looks ugly. So rainwater doesn't do that. But if you need to take a break, then you don't have to keep coming back and spraying them all the time. Okay, so that is the plant layout. Give them a quick spray. It's really important to make sure, especially the 1-2 grow pots, make sure they don't dry out, otherwise it will damage the plant tissue. So they've been in roughly the right positions of where they want to be planted. I will create some markers to actually identify the boundaries for each species. So now it's just a case of preparing each plant. I won't go into too much detail how to do that. There's plenty of videos on that, but basically we just separate the big plant mass into individual portions to get as much coverage as we need. If you're on a really tight budget, you could get away with using less pots and just separate it more. If you want more impact and a more grown in look, then you can plant it as the plants almost come in their pot without splitting up too much. So it's up to you, it's up to your budget and up to what your kind of impact you want straight away. As a hobbyist, I like to see things grow in, so I could use more pots if I wanted, but I think it's quite nice to actually see the plants kind of spread and grow in your care. Probably won't need as many Starogini pots as we've got there. We've got 5, but it is going to be running all the way from the foreground to the background, so we'll see. So I'll just get those prepared now, do a time lapse of that, and then make the boundary areas, and then we can start planting. What I'll do now is get up the photo that I took of the plan view yesterday, and then here we go, and then I'll copy that kind of layout with the sticks. Okay, at last we are ready to plant. I have segregated each species with the cocktail sticks, etc. I've even peeled off the labels of the 1-2 grow cups to label each section, so it's very obvious what we do. And now I will plant. It shouldn't take too long. It did actually take me probably 2 or 3 hours to prepare the pots, just because I wanted to do it properly, like no hardscape. So we just really need to get the most out of these plants as quickly as possible. The good news is, because they are 1-2 grown, they've been grown in a liquid media or gel media, they will hopefully start growing straight away. The interesting thing is going to be how they grow and how they kind of look next to each other. This is all new territory for me, so a little bit of trepidation, a little bit of excitement, and yeah, we'll just see how we go. Learn on the hoof, as they say. So let's get planting. Okay, so there we are, fully planted. Relatively straightforward to plant actually, as we prepared everything so well, clearly laid out the boundaries, etc. Fitted the filter here. Now it's time to fill up slowly with water. Do that super slowly so we don't hopefully uproot any plants or cause any cloudy water. And then I will tomorrow fit the CO2 probably inside the filter, and also potentially even include a small submersible heater in here. Then it will just be a case of waiting for it to grow in and seeing how the plants react to the light and the CO2, etc. There's a few unknowns about how things will develop, and there'll be lots of changes along the way. But yeah, I'm happy that it's now planted and we can watch it grow. So stay tuned for part 3 coming in probably a couple of weeks or so. Do drop us a like if you have enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.